So our article is on the jaw morphology and fighting forces in stag beetles. It was by Jana, Joris, and Peter. And I'm Carrie, this is Britton, and that's Haley. So our article discusses the ecology and development of horns in stag beetles and how the horn's size and shape is dependent upon environmental conditions and other physical characteristics. So one example that the article talks about is how nocturnal beetles have no horns at all because they need that head space for larger eyes. And that's an example of how their environment reflects their horn development. And on our slides we have the 16 different species of beetles, and it shows you the wide variety and diversity of their horns. So the article helps us to gain an understanding of the variety and diversity of these insects' horns, and one thing that plays a key role in the development of their horns is their fighting behavior. And a consequence of having large horns in these beetles is that they have to give up energy in charging and flying, and also that they're whole metabolists. So when they're in the larval stage, their horns have to compete with other body parts. And this image is just showing you how their horn development, how they're really long and they're used to throw their opponent over their back and dislodge them and attack their legs and things like that. So our hypothesis was that stag beetles have adapted their jaw morphology according to their bite force, and that this will prevent stress and failure in the jaws of a species with a more powerful bite. And they compared 16 different species with a wide variety of jaw anatomies, and they expected to find a connection between the bite and muscle force.
Okay, and so now we're going to talk about the methods. So like Carrie said, they used a sample size of 16 beetles. They used 9 different orders, and they were all males. And then they had one single female as a control of the jaw, like a regular female jaw. That way there was something they could compare the different varieties to. They also used dried exoskeletons. They bought each exoskeleton from a certified supplier, and they did this because they didn't want to have to worry about soft tissue decaying and possibly interfering with the experiment, as they were working with the beetles. They also did micro CT scans on all the males, and the image that's on the slide has each of the males, all 16, and you can see the darker the blue is where the stronger the jaw is, and then as it gets lighter till it gets red, it's the weak spots. And so that's where they're hoping to see all the breaks and all that. Then they x-ray scanned the female just to kind of get a little comparison. So then also the researchers used an FE method, which is the long red horn at the very top of the slide. That is how they kind of calculated the jaw, the tip, the length, where it all connected, the joints and stuff like that, just to kind of get a more overall sound idea of what the jaw is going to possibly do. Then they used surface models of all the jaw cuticles, and that kind of was just like an in lever, an arm, just to kind of get an idea of what's going to happen. And then they used TETGen software, which is tetrahedral volume mesh. And you can see that at the bottom of the slide, and that was just it's for the surface models, just to kind of get a more overall 3D, and that's when they used the FebBio 3D jaw volume models as well, just to kind of get a better feel of what the beetles are, and just get an accurate reproduction of the biological systems. And then they actually simulated real jaw biting, and that was it was a more accurate way of seeing how the beetles fought with their jaws. So then the results here, you see that they have the jaw volume has a strong allometry with muscle force. And allometry is the growth of body parts at different rates, which results in a change of body proportions. So you can see here, the greater the jaw volume, the greater the muscle force, the more positive the results will be. And then they have the in lever length, which also shows a positive correlation to the muscle force. And the next one, which is that the jaw length increased faster with more volume increase. So just kind of the more pressure applied, you get a positive result out of it. And then one of the interesting things was the mechanical advantage. It actually decreased when more muscle force was applied. And so this kind of shocked the researchers, but we'll get into that later. And then they also had a positive relationship between bite force and bite muscle of all 16 beetles that they tested. So results kind of showed that the stress relates to breakage, and that each stress test was independent with each of the beetles. And what that means is that basically it's either going to break at one certain spot or the whole jaw is going to break. It's not all the beetles, all the jaws broke, or all of them lost the weakest spots, basically. And so, for example, I have four different types of beetles. The first two are ones that they broke off in areas, and then the last two are ones that actually completely broke off.
For the discussion part, they realized that their hypothesis was wrong, and there's a large diversity in shapes among stag beetles. The larger, strong bite muscles have robust jaw shapes, and the long jaws increase the chance of winning battles. There's isometric relationships within the head, which means that the beetles grow within their head, so their jaws are proportional to the rest of their body. The FE simulations show the larger jaw volume doesn't increase jaw length disproportionately, and the stress the beetles have is similar to weak biters in females. The specimens with high muscle forces use their jaws more in aggressive encounters, and the larger jaws with higher force bite are strong enough to withstand their own bites. What to hypothesize next? Jaw morphology properties will be similar in females and males across species of stag beetles with strength.
And our question for the class was, what do you think was the advantage that the researchers gained by scanning the beetles before the beginning of the experiment?